It's the Medicine Lodge, Idaho store. There's something very attractive about this Pioneer Time Warp area called Medicine Lodge. Today we'll be crossing from Idaho into Montana to find new mountains to climb. In the upper area of Medicine Lodge Creek, the peak that we're aiming for will have us cross the Continental Divide into Montana. Elevation 10,601 feet. And a companion peak. Those peaks are in the Beaverhead range in what might be called Montana's goatee or Cul de Sac, the extreme southern point of Montana. So we are off from the Gem State to the Treasure State on our trusty steed along Fritz Creek. This is Memorial Day weekend, and we have seen campers at virtually every turnout in Medicine Lodge. I suspect, however, that we will not encounter many people today, for there is a question in my mind as to whether those peaks that we plan to visit have in fact been visited before. Sunny South and Cul de Sac, Montana's southernmost peaks. We are in the Fritz Creek drainage of Idaho with Fritz Peak, the Ram and the U form the background. In Medicine Lodge. If my directions are right, we should be encountering the Fritz Creek snowmobile cabin up here shortly. We parked the motorcycle back at the cabin, and as luck would have it, there was another party there, so we didn't do any photography. We'll catch a picture of the cabin on the return. We're hiking along a trail up Fritz Creek. A nice horse trail in the morning shadows. Although we're in the Beaverhead range, the limestone spires make us think we're in the Lemhis. Well, I don't know who Fritz was, but he sure has a nice creek named after him. Somehow I wasn't expecting such a sylvan appearance of the landscape. It's breathtaking with the spring greenery. We take leave of North Fork of Fritz Creek to head up a trailless side canyon to gain the crest of the Continental Divide. Approaching the CD, we've been fortunate enough to find a good game trail up our narrow lateral canyon. We are aiming to cross the CD at the lowest point, right around 9,100 feet elevation, because we will need to simply descend down into the Montana side to the next drainage. Dead Reckoning put us right on the Continental Divide, but a little too far east and higher of where we want to be. Right ahead is Cul de Sac, and we'll have to descend off of this ridge, drop down into Dead Man Creek, and then our first peak to ascend will be Sunny South. Looking to Fritz Peak, Medicine Lodge, and Idaho Falls, you can plainly see it's clouding up. We're right on the Continental Divide with the view west to the dominant peak in the region, Scott Peak, 11,393 feet, which is wholly within Idaho. Now we've dropped off the Continental Divide, looking into the Dead Man Creek drainage of Montana, with another view of Cul de Sac, Montana's southernmost mountain, and we'll drop off the Continental Divide into this lovely open meadow area, cross Dead Man Creek, and ascend up the gully to Sunny South. Looks like our rock is limestone with the characteristic layered strata put down in the Paleozoic seas over 300 million years ago. If you're old enough, perhaps you remember the 1950 song, "Go Chase a Moonbeam Across a Meadow." This would be the meadow to chase your moonbeam. In the meadow, the prettiest of all are in bloom, the alpine forget-me-not. Looking at a tarn on the Continental Divide. We're actually skirting the meadow here to avoid sagebrush whacking. We'll have our share of that though as we cross. Looking at the floor of Dead Man Creek. I don't see the creek though. Anyway, this is definitely an up and down experience, because then we reascend to our first peak of the day, Sunny South, which is trying to be sunny today. Well, I spoke too soon. Dead Man Creek is one of those pure limestone bed streams. You can bet it'll be dry before very long though. The chalked limestone gullies and coral-bearing brazier limestone remind me of the Lemhi Range. It should be fairly gentle from here on out. To be on the up and up with you, the summit is there, somewhere. Surprising to say, this area, the Cul de Sac of Montana, seems devoid of game. And the fact that the gentian is standing is an indication that there is not an overburden of game. In many overpopulated game areas, you'll see the gentian stalks are just nibbled down, but not so here. Perhaps the game is scared off today because of the high numbers of people in the valleys to start of fishing season. The Memorial Day weekend brings the human predator out into the backcountry. Sunny South is a limestone hulk. The true summit lies ahead of us. Well, we can see there is some game or was some game, as the case may be. What we've gotten ourselves into is an all-day hike. It's worth every minute of it, though. This black carbonaceous limestone, Dr. Oscar Hugh named the Scott Peak Formation. That was in 1962 when he defined this particular rock strata that serves as a cap for so many peaks in the Beaverhead and Limhi range. The Scott Peak Formation is Upper Mississippian, say 300 million years old. As anticipated, there is no summit cairn on top of 10,601 foot Sunny South Peak. Nor can I see any evidence that the summit has been previously occupied. We will build a cairn ourselves on the high point, and we'll leave a register. Also typical of the region, the best preserved fossils are found at the summit. The cairn is now built with some of the distinctive horncarl fossils in the area. And we will be leaving this register on Sunny South Peak. You be the next to come on up here and sign in. Okay, here's the tour. This morning we came up Medicine Lodge Creek, parked the truck, and then motorcycled up into the North Fork of Fritz Creek. And then we gained the Continental Divide at that point. Now, just a little bit over, we have Divide Creek Lake, which is in Idaho, but just barely, because right in front of the lake is the Continental Divide. And the Continental Divide will follow the high point and snakes around a bit in a fashion. And that green grassy area over there is Bannock Pass, the low point. The Continental Divide then gains elevation at that limestone area over to peak 9650 that we were on last weekend. And immediately behind that is Garfield Mountain, 10,930 some feet, wholly within Montana. The southern end of the Tendoy Range shows Red Conglomerate Peak, Knob Mountain, Cobble Mountain, behind it the Pitcher's Mound. As we would look towards Yellowstone Park, isn't it amazing that just 50 miles over there, 2 million people a year visit, and where we're standing, nobody's ever visited, as far as we can tell. We're looking out into the Snake River Plain to Idaho Falls, Fritz Peak in the near distance. A little further away, the ewe and the ram. Fossils found on the summit of the ewe are identical to the ones that we have found here. Proceeding on our circular tour, we have Hart Mountain, and Scott Peak. The Continental Divide would be on that ridge, Scott Peak being wholly within Idaho, and then the divide goes to the high point of the Beaverheads right there, so that Italian Peak is on the Continental Divide. There's a possibility that that is a permanent snowfield, and not too many years ago that may have been a small glacier. Notice the folded, contorted limestone rock strata bands. Recumbent folds speak to the geological violence in the past. Mountains were uplifted as part of the Laramide Revolution, say about 50 million years ago. Following the Continental Divide, that peak I would call Blackburn sits at the head of the Viola mine. Blackburn was the one that discovered the lead silver at the Viola. And we're just going along the Continental Divide here to Jump Peak, 18-mile Peak, Cottonwood Peak. In front of Cottonwood Peak is Nicolia Creek on the Montana side. Drainage would be part of the Missouri River system. It would ultimately flow into the Atlantic Ocean. Three sides were surrounded by Idaho, and this side is Montana. Southernmost point in Montana, called the Cul de Sac. And from this summit of Sunny South, we'll walk over to the true southernmost summit that is wholly within Montana. We'll call that one Cul de Sac. Before we head over to the Cul de Sac mountain, let's take a look at the Lemhi Range in the distance. Incredible Hulk. Goats Are Us, Clapper, Bell Mountain, Umpleby Peak. By the way, we believe it is Joseph B. Umpleby that gave the name Beaverhead Range to this section of the mountains. We are in the Beaverhead National Forest, Beaverhead County, Montana. It's a common name. We have the Medusa. Mount Perspiration on your left, Inspiration on the right, Trail Peak. Sheep Mountain, Gilmore Peak, and Portland Mountain. There's some awesome geology there. Descending Sunny South, we have almost fields of forget-me-nots. We will descend to the saddle and then reascend Cul de Sac, 10,529 feet, for our second summit of the day. We've been encountering several of these leveled out spots on the side hill, undoubtedly used by game as a resting spot. Cul de Sac Mountain awaits us. At 44 degrees 24 minutes north, Cul de Sac, Montana's southernmost mountain, wholly within the state, shows no sign of previous summit occupation. So likewise we will build a cairn and leave a register. Cairn is built. Let's take a look around. You want to see some awesome geology. Look at that recumbent fold in the limestone rock. There must have been a bubble within the earth that rose at that point. That is the Continental Divide. Now immediately behind it is Scott Peak, the highest peak in the area. It's another 11,000 foot peak unnamed. And as we move over to Italian Peak, there we see that snowfield, glacier at one time. Italian Peak sits on the Idaho-Montana boundary. That's Blackburn Mountain. The Lemhi Range forms the skyline, and we look north to 18 Mile Peak and Cottonwood Peak. Nicolia Creek, in the other direction, looking northeast, we have sunny South Peak, where we were a little over an hour ago. We walked across the divide and up the slope to Cul de Sac. The Tendoy Range, Lima, Montana would be in that direction. Garfield Mountain, Red Conglomerate Peak. Got a long way back, and that's the direction in which we're going to go. North Fork Fritz Creek. And that's looking out to the St. Anthony Sand Dunes. Let's see how far we can see out into the Snake River Plain today. It's always so featureless, so there won't be too much that you can see out there. Take a look at a geological feature at our feet over in Nicolia Creek. That hummocky terrain would indicate the former presence of a glacier. Because it's such a high to stand on a mountain summit, it's always a little bit of a letdown to descend. But we need to do it now, or else we're not going to get back by dark. Our descent route. Limber Pine Timberline. That's Dead Man Creek. We'll go down that drainage and then up and over to Fritzy. Oh, I need this. Oh man, that sweet water hit the spot. I almost think you overheat more descending the mountain than climbing it for some reason. A topographical map how this Cul de Sac works. The Continental Divide, and right in through here are the two peaks that we climbed. Notice how Montana is surrounded by Idaho. And we're near Divide Creek Lake now, and we'll be heading out Fritz Creek. Pitter patter come the raindrops as we finish our hike. From Targhee National Forest, Clark County, Idaho, this is Rick Bogger. Happy trails to you.